You are fucking consistent.
I am.
It is super impressive.
The consistency comes from an underlying belief that media allows me to amplify.
It's leverage, right?
One of the most unbelievable forms of leverage that we have as humans. Because if you look at distribution, it started off at like the printing press, because before that people only had like a Bible in their house, if they had any book. That turned into like radio, then that turned into television, and now it's these platforms.
Right.
And what's interesting is that they've democratized distribution. So what I mean by that is like if we back up, in order to get on the radio, you had to be like exceptionally talented. You don't have to do that anymore.
Anybody can.
Yeah, or you had to have a lot of money.
Right.
In order to get on TV, same. And now what's interesting is distribution's free. Now it takes my time to produce. And I do believe that the cost of production will go up because all the attention's there and people realize that. But it really allows you to magnify. And I know that you're at least I'm imagining based on what you're wearing, a believer. And what I'm aware of is like, we're commanded like not to, if there's a light, you don't put it in a closet. That's not the commandment. It's to put it on a table so it can provide light to others. And that's really how I view it and think about it. And that's why, so because I'm so convicted about that, it leads to consistency. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know what I feel like?
It's a duty.
Well, I feel like I'm being disobedient if I don't.
Right. Right.
And that's not acceptable.
That's amazing.
You know what I'm saying?
And you don't sell anymore, right?
No, I haven't in 2 years. Yeah, and this model is what allowed it to happen. So I went from 150 deals a year. I was doing like 100 deals a year for 10 years in a row, 100 deals plus. I did 200 deals twice, 200 and 202 back to back. And then when I saw this platform, I recognized like, oh, this is an opportunity to have a really big impact on a lot of people. And also do good by doing good. So once I saw that, then I basically let go of the production, which is a leap of faith. Which again, if you're familiar with the verse, like when he calls out to them in a storm and he's walking on water, he says, hey, do you believe I am who I say I am? And they were like, yeah. He's like, all right, then get out of the boat and start walking. But what I find fascinating about that, I was thinking about this, I actually teach a Bible study for the organization, and I was like, you know what I find really interesting about that story? Is if it was, first of all, that was to all of them and only one got out. That's interesting. The second one that's interesting is that if it was during like a completely crystal clear day where the water was like glass, it was 76 degrees and it was a sandbar, how many would have got out? All of them. But instead it was in a storm, right? Raining in the deep end. So the only way you would do that is with faith. That's the only way. It's if you believe. That's exactly right. So part of like the real reason, and this is good, it's cool that it's wrapping up in that way organically, is the real reason why we don't do things is because we actually don't believe they would work. Because if I really believed, let's say you knew you couldn't fail. If you wrote a book and become a bestseller, how much would you put into that? Everything. Does that make sense? So, you know, I think people will give you like this, like, here's how I'm consistent. Here's how, like the team I have in place that helps me with all that. But underneath it is this, because because what's driving it underneath is belief and conviction. And without that, you'll never be consistent at anything. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you. If I can help in any way, let me know. Yeah, pleasure, man. I appreciate what you do, brother. Yeah, be well. Independent of like sponsorship, we're all in the same company. And we all are shareholders. The way you incentivize people dictates behavior, and it influences behavior. This is right here is a bunch of owners talking to each other. And that's wild, because in other models, it's basically hierarchical, and that's not the case. There's like one dude or one woman who owns everything, and we're just like renting our business.
It's been an awesome experience, and it was the transition far exceeded expectations, which is very tough when you're transitioning team over. So
I think underneath, even though you can be very successful and good at something, whenever you learn something new or jump into something new, there's like fear, doubt, and worry.
Oh, for sure.
Which I think as someone who's been doing something well at a high level for a long time, it's actually probably feels really good to feel that again.
It does.
You know what I'm saying? And it's exciting. You're like, oh man, like this is cool. Like, yeah, I got to go to work. I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been awesome. The leadership team has been amazing. We've been able to get one-on-one with them, and they're just like, how can we help you? We want to support your business. We want to help you grow. Yeah. Lars has been great. Like,
Yeah, he's all
on a
right.
Sunday, he helped me. Like,
He's all right.
I'm like,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
I gotta get Stroker across the finish line
At
here.
that moment. Well, I mean, you're without like, I don't even know the guy, but you sent me the text from your OP or Mark.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy just laid it on.
Oh, did heavy?
Like-
Heavy?
The heaviest.
The heaviest you've ever seen?
Yeah.
It was
bad.
just
Yeah.
like, so bad.
He ended it with, I feel sorry for you. I'm
Yeah.
like, I would never talk that way to somebody.
No.
But
Yeah.
it really reveals. We have this guy coming over. So when I first came over, this person that came over, I won't name names because someone could finally figure it out or something. But essentially, this guy who I was talking to had two guys in his life that he respected. It was me and this other guy. So we had a 3-way call, and that went fine. But then it was just me and this other guy. I talked to him, and basically I said, you know, Jimmy, let's call him. Can you tell me one thing that's good about EXP?
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah.
And he said, I cannot tell you one thing that's good about EXP. I'm like, not one thing. The fact that we don't have overhead, or the fact that like rev share pays out 10 times more than profit share, and I went through like 10 things that could be your one thing. And I'm like, you can't come up with one thing.
Yeah.
And I said, Jimmy, it is clear to me that you cannot possibly be looking out for this agent because you're so blinded by what you're in, because you're so entrenched. Owning multiple. Well, here's the kicker. He's coming over.
Is he? That's fantastic. So what I think is interesting.
4 years later.
Yeah.
And he
And
unraveled all this
all
stuff,
of it.
this mess that he was in, multiple market centers and different, you know, business deals that he's made with different agents to keep them in. And, you know, that's all unraveling now. And he realized this is the only platform you can build on.
Yeah, I think there's a saying that says like it's very difficult for somebody to understand something when their livelihood is dependent on them not understanding it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's very difficult. So I think the main barrier to this is the stronghold of like lies that we tell ourselves. It's usually pride. It's usually ego. But once you can like objectively kind of unemotionally seek out truth and say like, hey, long term, what is a platform that somebody like you can build on top of that gives you multiple different ways to get compensated? And as you were referring to, it's like when somebody can't tell you one good thing, that means their mind's not open.
Right.
And they've actually haven't studied it. And when you said that, it reminded me, I talked to the regional owner and I said that to him and he was like, he said something similar. I'm like, okay, you haven't thought about it. And then you know what I said to him? I'm like, well, you know, that other thing, like that royalty fee, it's like top line revenue. Office doesn't have to be profitable in order to get it. Where does that go? He's like, well, you know, it goes over here. I'm like, yeah. You know what another word for top line revenue is? He's like, what? I'm like, revenue share. And he stopped in his tracks. He's like, well, I guess you could think about it that way. I'm like, no, that's exactly what that is. You know what I'm saying?
You guess.
Yeah.
Literally that.
Yeah.
But even the way your analogy around YouTube, like, did anyone get pissed at YouTube for sharing half their revenue to bring creators to bring their content on the platform?
Right.
It's like, that's revenue share.
Yeah. And I
It's
asked,
like, why are you so pissed at our model?
Yeah.
And that was me.
Yeah.
Being pissed at the model.
I know.
Like, and I had this whole thing around multi-level marketing and
based on a previous experience.
based on a very specific experience that I had. And I just was totally close to it.
Yeah.
Until you're not.
Until you're not.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I can keep grinding out this way of doing business, or I can just be open to something different and get to work. And it is scary because it's a different, like I was saying, it's a different part of your day that you have to dedicate some time and awareness to now opening up your social to talk in a way that agents will connect to versus just looking for buyers and sellers or whatnot. But
as an entrepreneur, though, you got to be able to separate yourself a little bit from these different things that you get stuck into. So I feel like when you're able to do that, then you can really open up your mind. Like, okay, let me look at this EXP model, as opposed to if I was the owner of a market center or what have you. It makes it a lot tougher
Because your livelihood is dependent on you not understanding it.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
we'll talk to someone from like that owns like a Century 21 or something, and they're still holding on.
Still holding on.
Yeah.
Like that to me seems like it's like you still wear those green jackets or the yellow jackets.
That was the first brokerage I belonged to,
like
Section 21.
Well, and what I think is super interesting is like that they don't actually recognize. I think mentally they think like, oh, I'm the broker and Matt's an agent. There's like this separation. What they definitely don't understand is that this model makes me them.
Right.
So like when I was leaving, the lady, I owned part of a market center. I sold it back in order to participate in the opportunity. Lost a bunch of money selling it back because they're not worth anything. She said something to me which was very interesting in the exit. She's an infinite player. She has a high level of integrity. So she's like, look, if you think this is best, opposite of your experience, if you think this is best for you and your family, best of luck. Now, she did try to throw some doubt bombs. I heard they don't get paid. I heard this, fine. But what she said to me on the exit, she said, hey, I just asked for a professional courtesy. Sure, what do you want? She's like, if any of my agents in my 5 different offices reach out to you, can you just text me and let me know? I said, sure, no problem. She's like, yeah, and I'll do the same for you. I'm like, well, that's cute that you think it's going to go in the opposite way. But you know what that made me realize instantaneously when she said that to me? What this model does is it elevated me to an owner. She's talking to me like an owner, not like an agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
And that's what this model does.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that.
With none of the buildings.
None of the buildings, none of the expenses.
None of the brokers. I mean, it is like the coolest way to build either like an expansion model or network, or it's just the most elegant thing.
Yeah.
There ever could be.
That's
I
right.
still do have my own office space that I pay for.
Yeah.
But-
Well, and here's what's interesting is like, I think what this allows you to do at this stage in your career and life is to really, and Lars did help me with this when I made that transition, is to really think about like, what do I want?
Mhm.
And what he told me is, it was what he said to me, which I think is applicable to you. He's like, look, dude, money's never going to be a problem,
Mhm.
right? It's never going to be a problem for you because of who you are and what you do. Now it's about time and impact. So how many people can I help and how much time can I reclaim? Because the real issue for a lot of top producers, I feel like there's 2 avatars. One are agents trying to do like up to 100 deals, and they need to be more efficient, more effective. They need better lead gen, script skills, all that, right? The other agent is a really high productive agent that has no time, that works 70 hours a week. So it's really looking at that and saying like, okay, when people tell me that, and I used to be this guy, it's like, yeah, next year I want to do more. And Lars would be like, why? And you're like, I don't know, because that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Right. So really examining that and saying like, hey, redefining what success is. And saying like, hey, what vehicles do I have at my disposal? What new skills can I learn and stack time on top of? And truthfully, I've been with this company for 2.5 years. I went from selling 150 homes a year, coaching 25 people, to I haven't sold a single piece of real estate in 2 years.
That must be nice.
Oh, amen. Hallelujah.
Do you have a team still or no?
No.
Yeah, yes.
And we've built an organization of 358 agents in 2.5 years, all because of changing my mind, changing the way I thought about things and re-examining like what success is. Because we were on a call and Lars was like, he told me like, hey, bring a personal win. And I'm like, why are you even asking me about that, bro? Like, let's talk professional wins. I'm good at that. And I brought back a personal win and I was like, hey, my son was like really excited that I was at his soccer game. And Lars looked right at me through the camera and he's like, that's terrible. And I was like, wow, I'm not used to people talking to me that way. And, but it really made me like evaluate, like, what am I doing?
Right.
And figuring out, I think a lazy mind's answer is to work harder. A more sophisticated mind says, how can I get more with less? How can I use vehicles and leverage to get more with less of my time?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. That's the goal.
So I would encourage you to like really think about that
Yeah.
and like what you actually want moving forward.
Yeah, rev share is a decision. So there are people that could do it that don't do it.
Because there
are people that you didn't think could do it that are like, how the heck does this person have 1,000 agents?
Yeah.
It's like they just decided to talk to agents about their business and their brokerage, and could this be a better platform for you? You should at least talk to my business partner. That's as complicated as the conversation needs to be.
Yeah.
But most agents are afraid. I think fear is
I think it's huge.
big part of it.
Yeah.
But then also just not making the decision that over time, in 3 to 5 years, I'm going to build this asset and it's going to take a little bit of work every day.
Right.
And don't let a day pass without working on it.
Yes.
I feel like on the daily, it needs to be just part of your everyday.
Well, that's could be my takeaway from my conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to have every day. I'm going to have 2 conversations with agents about their real estate business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it may be like, oh crap, where you got to tell your wife like, it's 7 p.m. and I haven't had my 2 conversations yet. Give me 20 minutes. Right. And then you're just in it. And I took a 66-day challenge and I actually didn't finish it. but I brought 5 agents in as a result. This was after I built, and I was just like, let me see if I can just start building again. Like 5 conversations a day with agents. And I think I got like 30 days in, and I gave up on it. Or something happened.
But you
But
got
I brought like 5 new agents
Yeah.
in.
Wow.
I'm like, I don't got to do this anymore. But just like micro commitments on the daily,
Yeah.
you know, like just if you're in like crap physical shape, you know, and you haven't tended to that aspect of your life, it's just 10-minute walk every day for the first 30 days.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, get some momentum.
Well, and I think what you're saying is really important because like, I think thinking is very difficult. So everybody just judges.
Mhm.
The heavy lifting is thinking. I also think that our natural disposition is to think short-term, not long-term. It's the way we're wired for survival. It's the way our brains are wired.
Yep.
So short-term is transactions, long-term is rev share.
Right.
And it's very difficult to like disconnect. And particularly, I see the backstop to this being lifestyle usually for people. They need to make a lot of money selling real estate, right? Because their lifestyle's huge.
Yeah, for sure.
So as a result, it actually is a backstop to long-term thinking.
Mhm.
But to Lars's point, like if you dedicated, I don't know, like 20% of your time
Mhm.
to perhaps learning some new skills, doing lunch and learns, talking to agents, that because of the nature of the way that this is, it compounds. So I've only brought 51 people, but that's turned into 358.
Wow.
So imagine like for every one listing, you could take 6.
Right.
The other thing that happens is as time progresses, which Lars can tell you because it's happened for him, it ends up looking like an egg.
Mhm.
So that multiple goes to 10x, 15x, 25x,
Right.
30x. And I can't,
It's like almost 50x.
right. And I'm not able to do that. I want inputs and outputs to be disassociated.
Mhm.
I can make up for with leverage what I lack in ability. So I'm not physically able to do that in the physical world
Right.
and in transactions.
Mhm.
So it's not that transactions are terrible.
Right.
They're wonderful ways of raising cash in a short period of time, but they don't compound and they're not highly leveraged.
Does bring in opportunities.
It might bring in opportunities for like investment, you mean?
Yeah, investment. I mean, so we have a property management company with the real estate sales.
Yeah.
So I just feel like the real estate sales team always brings in opportunities.
Yeah. So,
The other things.
well, and I think it's interesting because I don't know if you heard Brandon.
Mhm.
He came
Yeah.
over.
Yep.
He's got 22 lines of business.
Yeah.
What I thought was, was fascinating by what he said. Somebody asked him, hey, what's your most profitable line? It was lending money. $60 million a year with 3 employees.
Wow.
Least profitable.
Least profitable
Real estate
was
sales
real
team.
estate transactions.
But
With the
that's-
most headache, but it's the entry into that feeds all the other. So, but I think he goes into it knowing that. So what he said is like on lead gen, he knows his numbers. He spends like $30,000 a month and only 7% of all of those leads turn into listings because they're his last focus.
Right.
First focus is, can we wholesale this? Can we wholetail it? Can we do all this other stuff?
Right.
Can I lend you money? Okay, fine. We want to list it. We can list it.
Right.
But that's a pivot in thinking
Yeah.
where like, oh, this is a loss leader and I'm fine with it.
Mhm.
Where I can,
That's my mindset with it.
and you can give away more of your personal production, maybe net like whatever you're netting on the resale stuff, but it'll free you up to get into more leveraged things. Well, I mean, what I share with people is it took me to become, so there's like 4 types of millionaires. There's a virtual millionaire,
Mhm.
there's a revenue millionaire, there's a liquid millionaire, and then there's an asset millionaire. The easiest one of all of them is a virtual millionaire.
Mhm.
So if you have $1 million liquid and you spend $1, are you still a millionaire? No, you're 999,000 right? But if you have something that produces, let's say $6,000-$7,000 a month in cash,
Mhm.
that's the equivalent of $1 million invested at 6 to 7%. So you are a virtual millionaire. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it took me 5 months with RevShare to become a virtual millionaire.
Wow.
It took me 10 months to become a virtual 2 millionaire. That's unbelievable.
Specifically through RevShare or through social media?
Just through RevShare. And I know because we've done that in the physical world.
Mhm.
Only 4% of businesses ever gross more than $1 million a year. It's really hard. It took me 10 years to do it.
Mhm.
Right? So it's way easier, much faster, lower friction to become a virtual millionaire. But what the virtual millionaire does is it buys time. Right? Because it can cover housing, transportation, food. And that frees me to get rid of like implementing and managing to get into higher level things.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
And then what happens is the virtual, then I can focus on things to become a revenue millionaire, where I can sell courses, I can sell consulting, whatever, and that equals $1 million. If you live below your means, then you'll become a liquid millionaire. One day you'll turn around, you have $1 million in the bank, and you're like, whoa, that's interesting. Then what you do is take that money and become an asset millionaire because it protects the money from people who will take it, which is the government.
Right.
Yes?
Yes.
And then it's just rinse and repeat. and then it becomes a machine.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this is like this awesome pillar that just stands next to you that is frictionless, like on all of those agents. And nobody calls me.
Mhm.
They don't call me for like
Yeah, that's
broker
the case.
problems or like,
2,000 agents, and none of them bother me.
no, like I'm in,
Like I show up once a week for a training.
yeah,
You know, and
but they don't bother you for paperwork. They don't bother you for
no,
like,
yeah, for stuff. I mean, stuff I like to work on, I'm happy to work
yeah.
on. But like for anything deal related, you know. So it is worth the time and effort to put into it.
1,000,000%.
Yeah. No, we're super excited.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me know if I can help anyway.
We'll do.
Yeah,
Thank you, brother.
appreciate you, brother. I have a guy who's a mentor in my life. He's an agent. He's doing it for a workhorse. So he did what I did for twice as long. That 150, 200 homes a year, just pounding it out. But he's in his 60s now. He's worth a lot of money. Net worth wise, he makes a lot of money residually. And he's going through a transition that I went through, but I'm 20 years younger than him. So now he's asking me questions about it, which is interesting. Like, what is your schedule like? Is that weird that like you aren't doing those regimented activities, you know, whatever? What is interesting is I talked to him about like spending with a joyful heart. That is a biblical thing, or giving with a joyful heart. Because not only will you do that, but you'll also give a bunch of money away simultaneously.
That freaks Celia out.
I understand how it freaks her out, because when you first told me that you did that, it freaked me out, and I'm not even close to you or married to you.
There's a family that struggles financially, and they go to our school. I'm like, we should give her like $5,000.
And you just do it. That's the joyful heart thing. And what he told me, what Neil said, which was interesting, is that even though money's been such a defining thing in his life, he told me like in 2020, when he recognized that like everybody was like having a hard time, he started automatically tipping like 20% more than what he normally would. He started automatically like giving, and he's like, and it's what's interesting is I heard this said in a biblical context. It's the only place where God says to challenge him. The only one. Everywhere else, he's like, don't challenge me. But on giving part, he's like, just challenge me. But you embody that. I feel like
I know I'll give like a 100% tip.
You will, right? Freaking out, right? But you really are.
This $100 means way more than that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's true about it is your identity is not wrapped into it, and it doesn't have any control over you. A lot less than most. I'm sure it controls a little bit, like you sometimes think about it, but like you're like, that's like of the world type stuff, and you have it. So like,
But having the overhead too, I mean, I have a pretty big overhead with the coaching,
you do.
you know, because I haven't cracked the code on organic.
On what?
Organic.
Oh, traffic. So you have to spend money.
So I'm spending $20,000 a month on this.
Wow. Are you really?
Some months 30. It sucks now with the election.
Because you're paying so much for the ads.
Yeah, because I'm competing against
And Harris, yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I feel like the island shrinking in a way where we are in the cycle of real estate. Less people are participating, 3.8 million deals, which Leo said it's the lowest it's been in 15 years. But I think that joyful heart thing is interesting. And I'm increasingly like moving in that direction. It takes time to not idolize it. Because I think if I'm being authentic, is like in the past, like I idolized it. And I gave it way more power than it has. You know what I mean? Like the question is like from that book, Not a Fan. He's like, what do you get excited about? When things aren't working out, where do you go? You know what I would do if my business, like if I took less listings in a week than whatever, I'd look at money in the, like I'd go there to give me rest. It's like, it's the wrong place, bro. It's not the right, you're looking in the wrong place.
Do you have any quality of life sort of things that you do? Like, do you hire maid or?
we got someone that comes in. That's the easiest trade.
It makes total sense to do it.
We have someone come in for 5 hours, 3 times a week.
You do? Now?
And I can hardly wear I can only wear 2 pairs of underwear, 3 max, because they're cleaned like I'm right in.
Yeah.
And the ones I like are right on top.
Right on top. It's the only ones you wear anyway. It's like magic. Yeah. I think it's an issue of time. It goes back to that.
Well, we pay our girl $20 an hour.
Yeah. Well, and I told Carla, because we had somebody who comes in and if at first it was like frequency, and it's really me because I was like being small about it. I'm like, all right, we'll have them come like every other week. I understand how it can make you feel like in control perhaps, or like needed. Like that's not your highest and best use, dude. Well, and then Carla, she would come to me, and this is interesting for those who have significant others, but like she would come to me and be like, hey, like, and I'm working and I'm doing all this stuff. She's like, well, I need your help with this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying like I'm above that, but it's definitely not my highest and best use. I have a very particular set of skills that allows me to do like a lot in an area. Well, here's what I told her. I'm going to now have somebody come frequently and I don't want to hear about it anymore. And that solved the problem. He's like, first and foremost, to get to 100, it's going to come from listings, period, end of story. Second of all, and this is going to be real complicated. I need you to take notes. I'm like, all right. He's like, you got to wake up at the same time every day. He's like, get to the same time every day to the office. Pick up the phone at the same time every day. Do that for 3 hours a day. You will be a smashing success in this business. Because when you look at the numbers that Leo said, 76% of agents up until June of 2024 hadn't sold one of their own listings. That means 20-something% of the population is listing all the properties, which is where all the leverage is. And only 1.4% of all agents had done more than 30 transactions a year. That's bananas, bro. That's it. More than 30. So it shows the anomaly of doing 100, 150, 60, whatever it is. Like, you know, you might be doing 60 and think like, oh man, because you're looking at people doing 100. I'm like, dude, only 1.4% of the whole population of agents does more than 30 transactions a year. There's a difference between being competitive and being ambitious. So competitive is about comparison. That's fascinating.
Competitive about what?
Is about comparing, right? So part of the reason why you're like, oh, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You're competitive. So what were you doing? Comparing to other people. What ambitious is where I have a love of learning. So he gave an example that in a Netflix documentary, they showed quarterbacks. They showed Kirk Cousins, Marcus Mariota, and Mahomes. Kirk Cousins is extremely competitive, right? The thing about competitors is that oftentimes what they'll do, like Kirk Cousins will have 2 really awesome games and then a really poor game, right? And Kirk Cousins hasn't won any rings, by the way. And they did in the documentary where they showed where Kirk Cousins, he has like a room of me, like his trophy room. And he pulled out like something his high school coach said about him. And he read it and he's like, yeah, that's still me. That's interesting. He hadn't changed and evolved at all. He's just, but he's competitive. Where Mahomes is ambitious. Mahomes is like, he's making up throws, bro. He's throwing sideways. He's like left on. He's like, and he's constantly evolving. What's interesting is when you watch them play, who has more fun? Way more fun. Who has more rings? 3 and counting. So when I looked at that, I was like, oh, so when you first met me, I was more competitive, yes? Yeah. And what have I become?
Bro,
More ambitious, yes?
I remember when we sat down,
Yeah.
I remember the number, but you were like, oh yeah, I'll be fine if I get to this number. Like you 10x that shit already.
Right. So, but, and now what's happening is because of that ambition, I'm having way more fun. So I think the sweet spot is a mixture of like competitive without comparing, perhaps as much comparing, where you're playing your own game. I'm just competing against like maybe myself or my own metrics, where maybe the game changes to time. How much time could I save instead of like how much money can I make? And it's independent of what other people think or do. But then being more heavily weighted towards ambition, which is a love of learning. And I think in doing that, like I was telling Natalie, she's like, I think it's crazy that like they asked you to be on a panel to talk about media. Because I would just hammer people on how silly that was or dumb it was. But what I told her is like, huh?
She was saying.
Yeah. She's like, I think it's crazy that you're on that panel. And what I told her is that like, I take the responsibility. Like Carla tells me in our family life, she's a very strong, aggressive female. She's like, I have no problem with you leading, but you have to lead. Right? So, and sometimes I don't like that because it puts pressure on me, but it forces me to do it. Right? Well, what I told her is like, not only am I a leader in my family, but like to all the people who've decided to partner with us, it's a really big responsibility to lead. So I need to be ruthlessly, constantly in pursuing the truth. And what is true, learning it so I can give it back to other people. But that's that ambitious piece. And now I'm no longer competing with Brian and feel the need to compete with him, where now it's more like equipping him with all the tools that you need. Isn't that an interesting distinction? Because my life was like way smaller when I was purely competitive. And I was like, rah, but it was more, my impact was way more. It's just selfish.
What changed for you to see that though?
I think, to Lars's point, part of it is reaching, like, let's say you had a mountain off in the distance and you hit the mountain, but then it's not really like fulfilling as you thought it would. A perfect example of this would be like I did a triathlon with Carla. It was a while ago. And we trained for a long time. It's like this whole thing. And I had two observations when I came across the finish line. The first, there's a picture of me coming across the finish line with Carla. I'm like this. Everybody that's lining up along the finish line is looking in the other direction because they're looking for their person. So that was like this interesting awareness, like, oh, nobody cares. This, like, literally nobody cares. The second thing that was super aware to me was that when I crossed the finish line, nothing happened. Like, no, like, balloons dropped. Nobody treated me differently. I had the same experience where I had a financial goal in my life to hit like a net worth of like like $1 million. But when I hit it, nothing changed. The guy still flipped me off when he crossed. Like if I, pull up in the road, nobody gives me preferential treatment at Starbucks. They're like, bro, you're cutting me. Like, get out of the way. So it becomes this weird thing where you realize like these things that like the world tells you to pursue competitively actually don't really mean that much. So we live in an economic planet where I want to make sure that I can provide for my, like it says in the Bible, a man who does not provide for his own, specifically those in his house, is worse than an infidel. It's worse than an unbeliever. Like, that's my command, right?
Really says that?
Yeah, absolutely says that. And it says a good man, ready, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That's like a command. That's not like a, oh, if you want to. That's like an instruction. Like, I want to get my orders from headquarters, not from like here. You know what I'm saying? So I think, and when it goes back into a bit, it's a long way to answer your question, but the first two sins were not in the world. It was actually in heaven, where there were three archangels. One of them was Lucifer, who was the angel of worship. And he was beautiful. He was the most beautiful thing on the planet. Like a beautiful thing in heaven. Shimmered. Well, he got a glimpse of himself. And the first sin was born. Do you know what it is? Pride. What is competition? Pride. Look at me. Yes? What that led to is the second sin. Because once he was like, look how beautiful I am. Pride was born. The second sin that was born was rebellion against God. Because he started to be like, yo, why are we listening to this guy? Yeah, so that's why it's interesting, because, on our calls, that's why I push you so much.
Yeah.
Because it's a command from God, bro. It's not like whether what I want to do.
I've never heard it that way. I know about the providing more in a command. It's just what is the intention?
We talked about that.
That's what I'm like.
Yeah, we're business owners.
Yeah.
We all own, like, as you start to do deals, you own stock. Like, this is like a group of owners getting together.
Badass.
That's badass, right?
Badass. Really cool.
So is your focus going to be like production? Is it attraction, or is it both?
I'm definitely going to stay in my lane for sure.
Yeah.
Of taking listings.
Yeah, doing your thing.
That's what I do. But I appreciate the opportunity here that it allows me to also do that alongside of it without taking away. Like, I could have you, like, if you really wanted to recruit agents, like, you're recruiting agents. Like, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I have no interest.
Yeah.
But if I can attract agents and we can start doing the social media,
which you can
start doing things and that's alongside of it.
Yep.
That's sweet.
And then
this provides
the opportunity
to do that.
And you have
prime example.
Yes.
Prime example.
And then you have an operational partner in that EXP handles all of the brokerage component.
Right.
And then you dump them into our ecosystem and I'll train them.
Yes.
And Jose and Lars.
Remember when we were on the call? I'm like, bro, we got Aaron, dude. Like, we're good.
Well, and and I love
We're
it.
good, bro. We got Aaron, dude. Like, if you could track the agent, you're like, okay, go talk to Aaron. Like,
Yeah, we're good.
There's no way this man, whoever that agent is not dealing with Aaron.
Yeah,
But, like,
exactly. And what I tell our organization is like, I heard this analogy and I love it. Is let's say we were on like a special forces team. We're getting dropped into enemy territory.
yeah,
We're on an op, right? But we get separated. And you're by yourself in the dark behind enemy lines. Your gear gets scattered.
right.
And you see somebody coming up over the hill. You're going to have two responses to that. One response is you're going to be like, oh man, it's that guy.
Right.
The second response is you're going to be like, fuck yeah, it's that guy, bro. Hey,
Yo,
I am going to be okay.
You heard me say that on the call.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, we're good.
We had a private mastermind with Leo Perea, the CEO,
Yeah.
because Leo wanted him to like, hey, I'm coming. Bro, there were hearts breaking all over town. You know what I'm saying? And what I told Jeff is the first guy I was with selling real estate. He was a small little like aggressive kind of agent. He was one of the top agents in town.
Yeah.
And when we would leave a listing appointment, he would be like, "There's gonna be hearts breaking all over Gainesville tonight." If you put on a graph, you have dopamine, time, and then let's say you have a goal out in the horizon, the house, the car, the boat, whatever. Well, as you're moving towards that, you're like kind of going like this, but there's suffering. Because the root word of patience is actually patenti in Latin, and do you know what that means? To suffer. Because if I don't have something, that I'm going to suffer. Dopamine is the anticipation of something. It's not actually the getting the thing. I'm sure we've all like had something and then you get it and you're like, yeah. Like, no, it's the same thing. So like you have this big desire, you get it, and then you're like, okay. It's the anticipation.
So you said higher goal.
Well, so you set a higher goal and then you start the whole process over again. But what he's saying is if you look at the graph over time, the house, the car, the boat, the watch, whatever, like all of those material things in the physical world, you actually spend most of your time suffering with like very small windows of actually getting it. So the idea is there has to be something underneath that's actually more sustaining and fulfilling. Yes?
Yes.
And that is
Exactly.
exactly. And that's really, I think, the combination of the two, which is cool that as I'm saying this, she's going like this, like the combination of the two is, I think, like the way.
Yeah.
And it's the way that he intended.
This is the way.
Well, and I look at our businesses as a ministry. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have had to encourage and pray. And I mean, I look at my business as a full-fledged ministry.
Yeah, I view our organization that way. That the more people I can bring into the ecosystem, the more I can love on them, help them, support them. So
I think you feel like you're changing lives.
well, I don't. Well, what's interesting is like I have the good fortune where people will reach out to me and be kind, but what I constantly and perpetually remind them for their sake and mine is like somebody reach out to me like, oh man, you're making such a big impact on me. I'm like, listen, just so you know, it's not me.
Yeah. Good for you.
It's him. Like, yes, thank you. Well, here's because I know I can be prideful.
Yes.
We can all be prideful. So it's like him through me.
Yeah.
Thank you. But just know that that's what's really true.
I know that
And that, I think, shields you from making what just happened like
about you.
a big deal or about me,
Yeah.
because it's not.
Yeah.
Because if he sees something in me, it's only because it exists in him. Otherwise, he wouldn't see it in me.
So true.
So do you feel like a vessel?
100%. Which is what we're actually asked to be,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is the emptying of self,
Yes.
the dying to oneself.
Every
right?
day.
Yeah.
And
So
it
pick up
doesn't
your cross
happen
and carry
just
it, die to
once.
yourself.
Yeah.
So that way I can,
That every day.
yes. So that way I can be a vessel for like the spirit. And then it goes out into the world as an example of his glory, not mine.
You know, my kids went to Spring Hill, which is a Christian camp up in Michigan. Hi, I'm Joni.
I'm Ben.
Yeah.
Hi.
Joni's on our attraction calls. I give her lots of static.
Yeah.
Hence, in a loving, playful way.
And
Yeah.
I can take it and I
Yeah.
can give it back.
She does. Yeah, it's good.
When I go to pick the kids up, this was years ago. I've got grandkids now. So much. They would always have a speaker that would talk to the parents and the grandparents that would come to pick the kids up. Oh, And this one told the most beautiful story, and this is how I envision it. He goes, my grandma shared Jesus with so many people, and when she died, I just pictured the picture that she painted for me, because she said, I can't remember what his name is, but she said, it's my goal to have a big old front porch and have everybody on that porch that I have shared Jesus with. And to, when they die and they come to heaven, they're going to come on my porch and they're going to say, it was because you shared Jesus with me.
Hey, thanks, bro.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and to make it full circle, we live in a world in which we have a megaphone, which is media.
Yes, we do.
And my kind of really, truthfully, it's a version of pride. Because when I'm overly concerned about what other people, like, I think pride can show up in two ways. One is in like repentance, but the other is in, look at me. So me shrinking, and I'm not made in the image of something that shrinks,
Yeah.
is actually like me saying like, no, that's not for me, is actually a form of pride.
Yes.
Where like, look,
And
this is
fear.
like and fear. And like, this is like a vessel that now I can, and it's this vehicle where now I have this megaphone where I can amplify and be an example of goodness.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
And then you can take, because I thought about what you said to me. You're like, yo, I was like the best recruiter in like what I was doing before.
I was.
Well, what's interesting though is that it's context. So I was talking to I was given a breakout session, and it was interesting because this guy like wanted to stand up and like was kind of arguing with me about what I was saying, which was interesting that he would choose that time to do that. And he was wrong. But he was saying like, yeah, like I think this is the way. Right? Like picking up the phone. And I'm like, look, what I'm aware of is two things can be true at the same time. Yes?
How old was he?
Yes, 65. So two things can be true at the same time. Yes?
Yes.
And because two things can be true at the same time, what happens is sometimes we have a love affair with like our point of view because we want to be right.
Right.
At the same time, I'm interested in like unemotionally assessing what's true. Right? So if whatever you were doing in a time perhaps before there were platforms, how can I do that with platforms? And here's what I would propose is like, okay, we went 11, like think about this. We went 11 years as a company with no competitors. Zero.
Yeah.
We now have 22 models that look just like us.
Yeah.
So what I'm aware of is that is the context with which we're trying to attract now. So how do I elevate above my models better than yours?
Yeah.
The only way to do that is
Have them fall in love with us.
with me becoming the type of person that somebody would say yes to without even knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is you...
BBXP to wait to come back underneath.
Right.
There's no way he could have ever cold called enough and
To find him.
to find me. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
He put out the video and
And it was very helpful.
there's no way I would have ever been so objectionless
Yeah.
when it was time to come over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no I was like, yeah, that's my dude. We're going.
Yeah, what do I need to do?
Shoot me over the
Send me the text. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you see how like in the world that we live in today,
Yeah.
that is the answer to rise above 22 competing models.
Yeah.
Is the best way to show somebody you can help them is by helping them. And media provides this unbelievable space to give stuff, really good information away for free that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is people don't dig deep enough to figure out what do I know that's valuable?
I think what's stopping me on that is, everybody talks about CRMs. I'm just going to be honest. I don't have one.
Yeah.
I use Excel. People know me, like me, and trust me because I'm real.
So here's what's cool is like what's coming to my mind is like the best form of advertising is authenticity.
I know, but I can't help them with.
And that's okay, but those aren't your people. Now you find other people in your upline who can, like find someone who benefits from you and what you're doing and figure out like how can they, and we're all shareholders too.
Yeah.
So like if they have a question about something, you'd be like, hey, go check out Aaron's thing. You know what I mean? Because we're all part of the same company.
Yeah.
So we can't be like all things to all people.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
So what I'm curious about like utilizing that skill and applying it with media. So what did you do with the people? What were those conversations about? What was your mental maps? What were you doing? How were you doing it? And then how can I apply that to real estate and use media as a mechanism to do it?
Yeah.
Where I can send myself the digital version of myself. Like, I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Never met him before in my life.
Right.
He clearly feels like he knows me. Yes.
Yes.
But yeah, so how can I send myself in the digital form
Yeah.
to go form relationships with other humans?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't have to be cookie.
No, and I can't wait to like for you to start to do it because I'm gonna be like everybody's like, well, you know, you can't duplicate yourself. I'm like, that's not true. Ask Joni.
So good.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Yes.
I'm hosting you now, man.
Okay, let's do it.
So, hey, from EXPCon Miami 2024, Aaron
Awesome.
Novello.
Nice to see you in person, dude.
Yes, dude.
Yeah.
We hang out online all the time, but
Yeah.
this is why we come to events.
Mhm.
And events, in-person stuff is still a thing.
It
It
is.
still matters.
Yeah.
So what do you get out of events? Because we do everything online now, but you still make the time to come to meet with people. Why?
Yeah, two things. One is you can do culture remote, but it can't just be all high tech. It also has to be high touch.
Yeah.
So a perfect example is that is me and you are on Zoom calls on
Yeah.
a regular basis, and now we get to physically see each other,
Yeah. High fives.
and that increases the kind of intensity of the connection and the relationship.
Mhm.
The other thing that's true about me coming to these events is that proximity is power.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that we're all one relationship away from changing our family tree for the rest of our life. So I'm constantly and perpetually looking for those types of relationships.
Yeah.
I've probably had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 of those relationships and moving forward.
Okay.
My goal is to be that individual for other people.
Love it.
At the same time, if I'm in a position of leadership, I have to be constantly learning and growing and seeking those relationships out. And somewhere like this is a fantastic place to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
glad to see you in the flesh, man.
Yeah, man.
Um,
I'm a real boy.
you have told your media story before, right?
Yeah.
Like you're into media, you're doing it well, you're teaching others to do media at
Mhm.
a high level. But I mean, what? Not even 3 years ago, you were like, media, no thanks. Like, what was the aha? Like, what was the breakthrough?
Yeah. So, well, I was the guy who used to make fun of people who did media.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
And-
us standing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I heard a few things that really caused me to change my thinking because I think the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind.
Yeah.
And mine was sufficiently closed on that.
Okay.
And I think there's another saying that says once somebody makes a little bit of money, they become a piss poor listener.
Right.
So you start to get good at something and you're like, nah, like I don't need to learn anything else.
Yeah.
But I heard this following quote, which really caused me to pause, right? Because the way I built my business in residential resale, 2,000 transactions,
Yep.
then 100 deals a year, 10 years in a row, 200 deals a year twice, was through telemarketing.
Mm.
Picking up the phone,
Right.
pound of pavement, 3 hours a day,
same
6
here,
days a
same
week.
here.
And while I'm aware that's true, two things can be true at the same time,
Yeah.
right? So that does work. What's interesting though is I heard the following quote, which is that if you are a crappy marketer, you have to become a rock star salesperson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
That hit me when you said that on a call the other day. I'm like,
Yeah, right?
I was cold call cowboy, man.
Yeah.
That's all I knew how to do.
That's
And
right.
It was like, it changed my world when I hear you also being a sales guy.
Correct.
And I'm realizing I've been running that treadmill for 10 years.
That's
now,
right.
man. Like, I don't know if I got another 10 in me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I started, that quote opened my mind enough to start to really rethink that space and to go down the path of figuring it out.
Yeah.
So the idea is, let's say we were telemarketing, that's
Yeah.
one-to-one.
Mhm.
I want inputs and outputs to be disassociated,
Yeah.
right? One-to-one is associated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I make one phone call, I get one listing, I get one commission.
Yep.
Well, what's interesting about this space is me and you can do this. I can send the digital version of myself
Yeah.
out into the world
Yeah.
to basically speak to an infinite amount of people, endless amounts of people,
24/7.
24 hours a day,
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Yeah.
And people can form a para-social relationship with me.
Mhm.
They can decide if they know, like, and trust me without actually physically meeting me.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is then they call me. So it revealed itself to be a superior strategy.
Yes.
And so both can be true at the same time, but
Yeah.
one's more true than something else. And
Yeah.
then I started to see some of the people that are really monetizing attention very well.
Yeah.
And I started to look at them and be like, you know what? Kim Kardashian is not smarter than me, bro.
Yeah.
Like she just understands attention better.
Yeah.
Or like,
Looks a little better. Too.
yeah. And the Logan brothers, like Jake and Paul, like they just understand attention really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're turning that into like enormous, ungodly amounts of money. So the whole intention isn't just about money, but it allows me to magnify my impact.
Yeah.
Right. So not only is it a fantastic mechanism for like lead gen, whether you're doing attraction, And it's allowed us to grow to an organization of 356 agents in like 2 years, 2.5 years.
Huge. Love it.
And I hadn't picked up the phone once.
Lots of the agents, I think it's something, I saw a stat like the average agent in our industry is closing somewhere between 6 and 18 transactions a year.
Yeah.
So with everything you're seeing, all the people you've coached,
Sure.
what are the 1 or 2 things you think people are either missing right now or tripping over or stumbling on? What are the patterns?
Yeah. So one of the patterns is, because with those statistics, is 76% of all agents in the United States haven't sold one listing,
Whoa.
meaning their own listing.
Whoa. Okay.
So that means only 20-ish% of the whole agent population are taking all of the listings.
Okay.
So a thing to be very conscious and purposeful about that I think we miss in an attempt to try to grab money, because we get into an industry where there's no stability, there's no certainty, there's no paycheck, right? So you only get compensated when somebody like signs something or does something, is that we try to do everything, but we're not thoughtful about what's worth stacking time on top of. So when I look at that statistic, what that shows me is a very small percentage of the population is getting the lion's share of the listings, and all of the leverage is on the listing side.
Yeah.
So if I was going to be stacking my time, I would need to be stacking my time on that particular skill.
Yep.
So learning what to say and how to say it, where to find leads, where to get contact information, how to take that from a initial conversation to an appointment set, to a pre-qualification conversation, to a listing appointment, handling objections, close. That's where it's stacking time on top of.
Yeah.
And as time progresses, it'll continue to prove itself valuable, because what all of these platforms, whether it be MLS, Zillow, like all of these platforms need is data.
Yeah.
But the data that they need is listings.
Yeah.
And if I can become a prodigious provider of data,
Yeah.
I will always be disproportionately compensated for my efforts.
Hey,
does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. It's like you bring the data, you bring the value.
Yeah. So I don't even consider, like when I was listing property in high volume, over 100 listings a year, people are like, oh, you're a listing agent. I'm like, no, I'm a data provider.
Wow.
Because if they could figure out a way to get the data without you, they would.
That cut you out.
100%.
Yeah.
So I can continue to be disproportionately rewarded. The second thing that I would say keeps agents stuck is that 65% of us grew up in families that live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So what that means is that and in the United States, the same ratio, it's about 7 out of 10 couldn't come up with $2,000 for an emergency. So if you're standing at Starbucks, 7 people fit that criteria.
Yeah.
And because of that, we grew up with hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees. Eat all the food on your plate.
Right.
And if you want something done right, you need to do it
do it yourself.
which is terrible guidance. Because if you look at everybody who's ever said that to you, what is their life like?
Yeah.
They do everything themselves.
They're stuck.
And they're stuck.
Yeah.
So it's unwinding of that programming. And we all make 3 trades. One is time for money, which is fine. We just need to make sure we're being appropriately compensated.
Yeah.
The second is, though, which people never get to because of this programming, is money for time. So most agents that are stuck in that level of transactions, it's because they're doing everything themselves. And that programming, hey, if you do it yourself, you can save money. And what I like to tell people all the time is like, hey, how many really successful people do you know that have no employees? 0.
Right.
So the second thing that I would be aware of is you have to undo that thinking and trade money for time. Things like transaction coordinators, listing coordinators, and that will free you up to do the actual kind of highest value activity, which is prospect, lead, follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate deals.
Totally.
Yep.
The best part of everything you just said is most of that is not even skill building, it's mindset.
100%.
If your mindset gets on the right side, you're 80% of the way there.
And this is why proximity is so important.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more sad than watching somebody run enthusiastically in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So figuring out, like getting proximity to somebody, be like, hey, here's what I'm aware of. I love that you're excited, smart, and ambitious. I'm a little bit further down the path. Doesn't mean I'm smarter than you. I'm just a little bit further down the path. And as a guide, I highly recommend that you stack time on top of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's power in clarity.
Yeah.
And the attrition rate in our business, 76% are out within a year, 87 within 5.
Crazy.
But the reason they are is because of what we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just hunting and pecking.
Well, and shiny object syndrome, thinking like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, got to do this, got to do that, where there's immense power and focus.
Yeah.
And then if you focus in the right areas over time, what happens is your efforts compound. And that's what I want.
If you're feeling spread thin, I think this industry is probably the worst offender of being spread thin and
Yeah.
shiny object syndrome. So
Yeah.
take a page out of this book, y'all, and subscribe. Aaron's got way more good content on this stuff. So thanks,
Yeah.
brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you, Miami.
Let's go. Let's grow. YouTube is where it's at, dude. And it's what Pineda told me all the like 3 years ago. He was right. Remember that guy yesterday? He asked like, "What's the best platforms?" I'm like, "You shouldn't be thinking that. You should be thinking building an ecosystem of attention." Again, what I really do believe is that the future of real estate is my community of agents and his community of investors coming together. Agents have a tendency to not understand any of the creative side of real estate, and as such, they don't add enough value. Our communities, by blending them together, it's really equipping agents with a higher specialized knowledge and skill so they can do more deals, and that's really all that matters.